A fund for entrepreneurs with disabilities is to be launched in Valcom to afford opportunities to sectors of society that have been kept out. Minister of Small Business Development, Zulu, will unveil the Amavulandla Fund. The first of its kind is specifically designed for entrepreneurs with disabilities that goes towards affording all citizens equal opportunities in society. The new fund will be enjoyed by businesses with a minimum of 26% ownership by people with disabilities who show physical involvement in the running of the company. We are now joined by Edith Fries, Director General from the Department of Small Business Development. Thank you so much for joining us. A very good morning to you. Really do appreciate your time with us. Besides using physical disability as a selection criterion, how does this scheme differ from other small business initiatives?
This scheme is exclusively for people with disabilities. There are many schemes that we have in between us and the entities that work with us. And in those schemes, people with disabilities have to compete equally with able-bodied people. But we have set aside this 24 million rand fund in a scheme that is earmarked for businesses that are small businesses owned by people with disabilities.
Now, the scheme also includes cooperatives with 26% ownership by people with disabilities. Are there any mechanisms in place to prevent people with disabilities to be used as fronts for able-bodied people?
Fronting is a problem that confronts many, many sectors. And the way in which we will defend the integrity of this scheme is we insist that at least 26% of the owners are people with disabilities. And that disability, the claim to disability, must be supported by a medical certificate. And so we don't judge what that is. If a medical practitioner says the person is disabled, we will accept that. And once an enterprise has qualified, it could be a small business, it could be a cooperative, and once it has qualified, we provide support for up to 2 years. The support will be in the form of mentoring, coaching, and business management training, which we are likely to do through the other entity, the Small Business Development Agency, SEDA. And so there will be physical engagement with the project for a period of 2 years. And so we will be able to see then whether the people with disabilities are operationally involved in the enterprise. That is our requirement. They must be operationally involved. They can't be sleeping partners in the business.
Are there any mechanisms to ensure that goods and services supplied by beneficiaries of this scheme get preferential treatment in the market?
Government is required to target specific groups: women, youth, people with disabilities. There are revisions that are being introduced to the public, the PFA, the Preferential Public Procurement Act, Framework Act. And in that we could say that at least 2% of the service providers should be people is reserved for people with disabilities. So we are able to designate who can benefit from it.
And are there different levels of disability that you use to ensure that the most deserving people get funding from the scheme? And does the scheme also cater for people who don't have obvious disabilities but cannot compete in the mainstream economy?
I don't think that is taken into consideration. We have worked in developing the scheme. We have worked with the sector, the organization called People with Disabilities South Africa, and they have advised us. And so we don't consider ourselves authorities to discriminate against different levels of disability. So it's sufficient for us that the medical practitioner has certified the person as being disabled. It is not our place to say the one is more disabled or less disabled than the other.
And do you encourage people with disabilities to employ others with similar challenges in their businesses to ensure broader social upliftment?
I don't know whether we can tell a business how they should be run. And I would expect that if the 26% of the people who are managing and operationally involved in the project are people with disabilities and have benefited from a fund for disabled people, that they will make those decisions. It also depends on what the goods and services are that are being produced or developed, and what services they are offering.
And then lastly, is there a support mechanism in the form of assistance with business plans to ensure that the loans and grants go to businesses that will thrive?
Definitely is a support system. We have learnt that our work cannot end with just giving financial support to enterprises. We have to provide support to get them over the threshold until they can stand on their own feet. And so in this scheme in particular, we commit to supporting businesses for at least 2 years with coaching and mentoring. So we will be engaging with them because we are keen to see how they progress, because after a period, probably after 2 years, it is an opportunity to draw the lessons and review the scheme if we have found that it does not meet the objectives that we wanted it to.
Edith Vries, thank you so much for your time here on Morning Prime. That was the Director General for the Department of Small Business Development there. Moving on and further debating this, we are joined live by Emily Olifant from the National Council for Persons for Physical Disabilities, who joins us live in studio to further unpack this. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
It's an absolute pleasure. Firstly, what is your response to what Edith Vries had to say regarding the scheme, and how successful do you feel this funding scheme will be?
I really appreciate what the department is trying to do. It's about time, I must say, because like Edith was saying earlier, we had to compete with able-bodied business people to obtain the funding that we need for our businesses. And in most cases, it's pretty difficult because then you get other companies fronting people with disabilities to obtain those funding. But this is definitely going to help us a lot in terms of how they have planned it, the monitoring system that is being put in place, which we will continue to work with them on that one to ensure that it reaches the right people. But it's an exciting opportunity, and it's about time really, because now we have something that is dedicated to people with disabilities that can work for them.
Now, what are the needs that need to be addressed for the physically disabled entrepreneur, and do you feel this funding scheme will give you this?
I think the needs, like any other business, people with disabilities are not special cases. But this fund is going to help in terms of us obtaining the funds easily. Now, I think what is needed is to ensure that the deserving organizations, the deserving entrepreneurs, and the companies that work for people with disabilities, they follow the whole compliance procedure is being guided by the department, by this fund, so that it makes it easier for them to access the fund, because access is a critical issue. And any business person will tell you, even an entrepreneur will tell you, that obtaining funding is a problem. Now, it's easier, it's made easier for us, and I really appreciate what the department is doing, because but they just need to reach out to people with disabilities and use the right medium so that the message can go out and that the people with disabilities can know about this.
Now, do you have any concerns regarding this initiative?
I think in terms of, I like that she mentioned that they're going to physically work with the companies or entrepreneurs with disabilities to make sure that the funding are not being manipulated, or people don't use people with disabilities just to obtain the funding. That is the number one issue that I would like to see that gets addressed. And also the red tapes, things that really hinder people from obtaining the funds. Those things need to be carefully monitored and removed, because we don't need barriers. There's a lot of services that people with disabilities can provide. There are already organizations doing work already. All we need is easy access to the funding, and that the processes are made so simple and easier for us to obtain and to follow with.
Now, the main aim of this funding scheme is to empower people with disabilities to have access to business opportunities and to ultimately become active participants in the mainstream economy. We understand by providing money through this funding scheme, but don't you feel that there needs to be more than that? Perhaps workshops regarding the transition into the mainstream economy or something like that. What are your thoughts on that?
Definitely. If you win a lotto, no one gives you a handbook as to how you're going to manage it. But it's very important that when you make provision or you make available so much money that's going to go and help a lot of entrepreneurs with disabilities, that money is there have to be workshops. Awareness needs to continue about this, because as much as we need training and empowerment on an entrepreneurial or business level, to use this funding effectively, we need workshops, we need constant awareness to
Engagement.
Engagement,
Definitely.
You're right.
And then lastly, before we let you go, why do you feel something like this has not yet been created? Why has it taken it so long for something like this to come about?
I guess, realistically speaking, and I'll commend the department, because they've only been in operation since this administration. So we will give it to them that at least within these 5 years, something has happened. Why it hasn't happened before, I really don't know. And really, it's one of the things that disability has always taken a back position when it comes to people raising awareness or people encouraging or promoting certain things. Disability has always not have been given much priority that it should have been given. But I really commend the department that they have seen the need, and now they are providing this, and then we're going to come now and push a panda and play along with them.
Indeed. Emily Oliphant, thank you so much for your time here on Morning Prime. We really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming into our Midrand studios. That was Emily Oliphant from the National Council for Persons with Physical Disabilities, joining us live in studio, talking to us about the fact that Minister Lindiwe Zulu is to launch a funding scheme for entrepreneurs with disabilities.